The girl learned very early how to stay quiet. Silence was safer than words in that house. She lived in a small, old home at the edge of a crowded town where walls were thin and memories felt heavy. Her father had passed away when she was still young, and after that day, nothing ever felt warm again. The house still looked the same from the outside, but inside, it no longer felt like home. Her stepmother moved through the house with sharp footsteps and colder eyes. To neighbors and relatives, she spoke sweetly and smiled often. People praised her for taking care of a child that was not her own. But behind closed doors, her voice changed. It became rough, impatient, and full of blame. The girl was often reminded that she was a burden, an extra mouth to feed. Someone who should be grateful for even the smallest thing. Every morning started before the sun came up. The girl would wake to the sound of utensils clattering in the kitchen. She knew what that meant. Before school, she had chores to finish. Sweeping the floor, washing dishes from the night before, filling water buckets, and sometimes cooking simple food. If anything was missed, even something small, the stepmother's anger would follow her all day. Food was never shared equally. The girl learned to eat slowly and quietly, often finishing what others left behind. She never complained. Hunger became normal, like the creaking of the floorboards or the dripping tap in the bathroom. On some nights, she went to bed with her stomach empty, telling herself it was fine, that tomorrow might be better. School was the only place where she could breathe freely, even though it wasn't easy there either. Her clothes were old and faded, sometimes stitched again and again. Other children noticed, but she kept her head down. She loved sitting in the classroom listening to lessons, because it made her forget everything else for a while. Books felt like friends that never shouted at her. She was a quiet student, but her teachers noticed her effort. She tried hard, not because anyone pushed her, but because learning gave her hope. She believed that if she studied well, one day her life might change. Still, the moment the final bell rang, her chest tightened. Going back home always felt heavier than carrying a bag full of stones. At home, kindness was rare. Praise did not exist. If she did something right, it was expected. If she made a mistake, it was remembered for days. The stepmother often compared her to others, saying how lucky she was to even live there. The girl nodded and listened, even when the words hurt deeply. Some nights, she sat by the small window in her room, looking at the streetlights outside. She wondered how other children lived. Did they laugh freely? Did they feel safe in their own homes? These thoughts stayed in her mind, but she never shared them. She had learned that sharing feelings only made things worse. The house itself seemed to reflect her life. Paint peeled off the walls. The furniture was old and uneven. Her room had barely any personal items. No photos, no decorations. Just a bed, a small shelf, and her school books. Those books were her most valuable possessions, and she guarded them carefully. Relatives rarely visited. When they did, the stepmother put on a different face. She spoke kindly to the girl, offered her food, and even asked about school. The girl knew better than to speak too much. She answered politely and stayed quiet. Once the visitors left, everything returned to how it was before. Deep inside, the girl felt invisible. She believed her pain did not matter to anyone. She told herself that this was her fate, and she had to accept it. There were moments when tears came without warning, but she wiped them away quickly. Crying solved nothing. What she did not know was that someone else still remembered her. Someone connected to her late mother, someone who lived far away and had been absent for years. This person had not forgotten the promises made long ago. From a distance, quiet questions were being asked. Pieces of truth were slowly coming together. The girl continued her days the same way, unaware that her life was already being watched carefully. Each chore, each quiet meal, each lonely walk to school was another step toward a change she could not yet imagine. For now, she only knew how to survive. She went to sleep each night, hoping for a future she could not see. She did not dream of wealth or comfort. She only wished for peace, for a place where her voice mattered, for a home that felt safe. Little did she know, the silence she lived in was about to be broken, and the house that once held her pain was not going to control her life forever. Weeks passed in the quiet. lonely rhythm of the girl's life. She moved through each day carefully, like walking on thin ice. She knew when to speak and when to stay silent. She knew when to smile and when to look down. Every moment of peace was temporary, and she had learned to take it whenever she could. Even with all the hardships, she kept going to school, holding on to the hope that learning could give her a life beyond these walls. It was during one of these ordinary school days that news arrived in the form of a visitor. Her uncle, a wealthy man who lived far away, decided to come and check on her. He had not been in her life for many years, and until that day she could barely remember his face. But he carried something different in his eyes, a kind of gentle curiosity and concern that she had never seen in anyone else before. He asked about her quietly, observing without interrupting her routines. The uncle's arrival stirred something in the house. The stepmother changed her behavior for a short while, speaking with a smile and showing politeness that felt forced, but the girl could see the difference in her eyes. The act would not last long. She learned to trust her instincts. She knew this change was temporary, a mask worn for outsiders. She remained careful, keeping her distance and not letting her feelings show too clearly. The uncle noticed more than he let on. He saw the thin clothes, the worn shoes, and the tired expressions that lingered even when the girl tried to hide them. He noticed how she carried herself, careful, quiet, and constantly aware of someone's potential anger. Small gestures revealed her life, the way she made her bed perfectly despite exhaustion, the careful way she held utensils while eating, and the polite nods when spoken to. To most people, these would seem like ordinary behavior. To him, they told a story of resilience and quiet suffering. Over several days, the uncle asked gentle questions about her school and friends, her favorite subjects, and how she spent her time after classes. The girl answered softly, never showing more emotion than she thought safe. There were moments when her lips twitched into a tiny smile, but it vanished quickly under the watchful eyes of the stepmother. The uncle noticed these small sparks. Understanding that beneath the exhaustion and fear was a child who had not yet given up on hope, evenings were the hardest. The uncle sometimes stayed longer, just observing quietly, talking to neighbors who knew her life indirectly. They shared stories, sometimes unaware of the girl's pain, and the uncle listened carefully. He took notes, not in writing, but in memory, forming a picture of her daily struggles. He realized the depth of neglect and emotional hardship she faced, things the girl had learned to accept as normal. He felt a mix of anger and sadness, but also determination. He knew something had to change. Despite the brief moments of attention, the girl remained cautious. She had learned not to trust easily. Smiles were dangerous, and kindness often came with hidden expectations. But the uncle's calm, steady presence slowly began to break down the walls she had built. He never demanded her affection or attention. He simply offered consistency. That quiet consistency was unlike anything she had ever experienced. One afternoon, the uncle took her aside while the stepmother was out running errands. They walked in the small garden behind the house, a place she had rarely visited. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and small flowers that struggled to bloom between the cracks. He asked her simple questions: what she liked to eat, what she wanted to learn, what made her happiest. She hesitated at first, unsure if answering would bring trouble. Slowly, words came. A soft voice that had been silent for years began to speak. For the first time, she talked about her favorite stories, the books she had read, and the dreams she dared not share. She spoke of learning new things, of exploring the world beyond the small house, and even of small things like wishing for a warm bed without fear of waking to anger. The uncle listened, nodding quietly, never interrupting, never judging. Each word was a small victory, each sentence a step away from the fear she had lived in for so long. He left that day promising to return. But the girl barely believed it. People often said words that never became actions. She had learned to keep her hopes small. Still, there was a strange warmth in her chest she could not name. The presence of someone who seemed to care without demanding anything planted a seed of hope, she thought. It died long ago. The days following his visit were a mixture of old routines and new feelings. She returned to her chores and school, But sometimes she caught herself imagining a life different from the one she knew. A life without fear, without harsh words, without the constant weight of responsibility beyond her years. She would think of the uncle's gentle questions, his calm eyes, and the kindness he carried effortlessly. For the first time, she wondered if life could be different. The stepmother remained as strict and cruel as ever. She noticed the girl's slight smiles and questioned her. Each time the girl found quick excuses, knowing better than to show what was really growing in her heart. Still, she could not erase the hope that had begun to form. The thought that someone outside the house cared enough to notice her struggles. The uncle returned, as he promised. This time, he brought more than words. He brought quiet support, talking with neighbors, arranging for help, and asking questions that hinted at change. Each action was subtle, never overwhelming, but noticeable enough to make a difference. The girl watched quietly, understanding that life might finally be taking a turn she had never expected. She began to dream in small ways, imagining books she could read, lessons she could attend, and a life where her voice mattered. She did not speak these dreams aloud, not yet. Instead, she held them close, a secret treasure that kept her awake at night and gave her strength to face the next day. Each day became slightly easier, each chore slightly lighter, and each step home slightly less heavy. The uncle continued his careful observation. He met teachers, spoke to relatives, and quietly built a plan. Every detail mattered. Every moment counted. He understood that change could not happen all at once, that trust had to be earned and patience practiced. For the girl, each day brought small moments of relief, though the shadow of the past always lingered, and so the ordinary rhythm of her life continued, but with subtle differences. There were glances of understanding from her uncle, small reassurances that she was not alone, and a sense that the world outside the house had more to offer than she had ever imagined. Her courage grew quietly, hidden beneath the layers of fear she had learned to wear. She was beginning to believe slowly that someone genuinely cared for her well-being. The visit left a lasting impact. She began to notice details she had never seen before, flowers that could bloom, sunlight that warmed her face, and neighbors who smiled without expectation. Each small observation reminded her that there was a life beyond the walls that had constrained her, that someone was taking steps to help her find it. The girl's heart, long burdened with fear and silence, began to feel a fragile but real hope. Even though the stepmother remained a presence of control, the girl learned that not all adults were the same. Not all voices were harsh or unkind. There were people willing to see the truth and help quietly without demanding gratitude or obedience. And as she continued her days, walking carefully between chores, school, and small moments of freedom, she held on to that hope, unaware that the next steps were already being planned and that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. The days that followed the uncle's visits were different. The girl noticed small changes in the air around her. She still woke up early to do her chores, still walked to school in her worn shoes, and still obeyed the rules of the house. But something invisible had shifted. The steps she took were no longer entirely dictated by fear. There was a sense of possibility, even if tiny and fragile. She did not speak of it, not yet. Hope was a fragile thing that could be broken if exposed too soon. The uncle had been gathering information quietly. He met teachers, neighbors, and even distant relatives who knew fragments of the girl's life. He asked about her schooling, her home environment, and the challenges she faced. Each story added to his understanding of the hardships she endured daily. He did not rush, did not impose, but slowly and carefully. He prepared for what needed to happen next. One afternoon, he returned with a serious purpose. The girl noticed the difference immediately. There was no small talk, no gentle questions, only a quiet determination in his eyes. He spent hours with paperwork, quietly arranging things behind the scenes, while she sat nearby, pretending to read a book, but aware that something important was happening. The stepmother, unaware of the depth of the plan unfolding, continued her usual routines, confident that she controlled the household. Then came the day when everything began to shift in a visible way. The uncle had involved authorities quietly, Social workers and legal advisors visited the house, asking questions about the living conditions, schooling, and emotional well-being of the girl. Each question seemed simple, but carried weight. The stepmother grew defensive, her polite mask slipping in moments of irritation. The girl remained silent, observing everything, feeling a mixture of fear and cautious hope. Evidence of neglect was presented calmly, clearly, and professionally. Reports from teachers, neighbors, and medical checkups showed that the girl had been living under challenging conditions for years. The stepmother's excuses, once powerful in her home, held no weight against the evidence. She realized with growing unease that the girl's life was no longer solely under her control. The girl watched all of this with wide eyes. She did not fully understand the legal and procedural details, but she sensed change. For the first time, she felt that someone outside of her immediate home cared enough to act on her behalf. The uncle's calm presence reassured her in a way she had never experienced. He did not yell, he did not demand, he simply stayed steady. Giving her the strength to witness her life being acknowledged, the moment came when the stepmother had to leave the house. It was quiet but final. She packed her things, her face showing frustration, anger, and a hint of fear. The girl stayed in her room, feeling a mixture of relief and disbelief. The house was no longer dominated by harsh words and constant control. There was space now for something new, though she did not yet know what it would be. The uncle took her to a new place, safe and comfortable home where she would stay. The rooms were warm, bright, and filled with small details meant to make her feel welcome. There were bookshelves, soft beds, and spaces for her to move freely. The girl could hardly believe it. She wandered through the house, touching surfaces, exploring corners, and realizing that for the first time, this space was truly hers. Life in the new home was quiet and peaceful, though the girl still felt cautious. She had spent years adapting to fear and control, and trust did not come easily. She tested boundaries carefully, aware that life could change quickly, and disappointment was familiar. Yet, the small acts of kindness from her uncle, the way he asked about her day, listened to her concerns, allowed her to make small decisions, began to build a sense of security she had never known. School continued. But now the girl had support. Supplies, proper clothes, and encouragement made a noticeable difference. She could focus on learning without worrying about where her next meal would come from, or whether she would face anger at home. Her teachers noticed the change, commenting on her growing confidence and energy. She began participating more in class, asking questions, and even helping others with their lessons. Each small step felt monumental, a reclaiming of a childhood she had almost lost. In the evenings, she explored the new neighborhood, slowly learning the rhythm of life beyond her previous home. There were parks, shops, and friendly faces. The noises of the streets no longer felt threatening, but inviting. She started to see possibilities, people who smiled without expectation, moments of laughter and quiet time that could be her own. The sense of isolation that had defined her early years began to lift, replaced by a cautious excitement about what the future could hold. Despite the safety, the girl sometimes struggled with memories of the past. Dreams and thoughts of the stepmother's harshness would return, sometimes waking her in the middle of the night. The uncle noticed her restlessness and offered gentle comfort, never forcing her to speak, but allowing her space to process at her own pace. The girl began to realize that healing was gradual, that trust needed time, and that patience was a necessary part of recovery. As weeks passed, her confidence grew in small but significant ways. She started participating in school activities she had never dared to before. She began keeping a small journal, writing down thoughts and stories she had once feared sharing. Each written word was a release, a way to reclaim her voice that had been silenced for so long. The uncle encouraged her without pressure, proud of her courage, understanding that the most important progress was the one happening quietly within her. And then, in quiet moments alone, she allowed herself to dream again. She imagined a life where her voice mattered, where her opinions were valued, and where kindness was a constant rather than a rare occurrence. She imagined exploring beyond the neighborhood, making friends, and learning new skills that could change her life. The sense of possibility was intoxicating, yet she kept it close. Aware that life had not always been kind, the turning point was not marked by dramatic events but by small, consistent acts of support and presence. The girl noticed how her uncle's attention never demanded gratitude or obedience. It was simply steady and reliable. Meals were shared without tension, conversations were respectful, and laughter was permitted without fear. She began to understand that not all adults were the same and that her experiences did not define her future. Life in this new chapter was not perfect, but it was alive with hope. The girl continued to grow, slowly reclaiming confidence and joy. She discovered talents she had suppressed for fear of criticism and began nurturing them. Each step forward was small but meaningful, a reconstruction of a childhood nearly lost. By the end of the third month, a subtle yet profound transformation had taken place. The girl, once quiet and fearful, was beginning to find her voice. She smiled more easily, spoke more confidently, and engaged more openly with the world around her. She had experienced the power of kindness and consistency, and it had changed her fundamentally. She understood that the past could not be undone, but the future was now in her hands. Guided by someone who genuinely cared for her well-being, the first weeks in the new home were like waking from a long, dark dream. Each day brought new experiences and small moments of wonder. The girl learned to enjoy simple things, like the smell of fresh bread in the morning, the warmth of sunlight through clean windows, and the sound of birds chirping outside. Every detail felt special because she had never been allowed to notice such things before. She was learning slowly what it meant to live without fear. School life became even more vibrant. With proper clothes, books, and supplies, she felt more confident in her studies. She began to participate in class, answering questions, and helping classmates. Teachers noticed her growing interest and praised her efforts, giving her small encouragements that she cherished. For the first time, she felt that learning could be more than just a way to escape her home. It could be a path to her dreams. At home, the atmosphere was gentle and predictable. Her uncle maintained routines that provided stability, like shared meals, quiet evenings, and time for rest and study. He never demanded too much from her, allowing her to adjust at her own pace. Slowly, she learned that kindness could be consistent and that someone could care for her without asking for anything in return. This simple truth was revolutionary to her, reshaping the way she saw relationships and trust. Evenings were filled with small joys. She explored the neighborhood carefully, making note of shops, parks, and friendly faces. Occasionally, she ran into other children her age and discovered how to play without fear of criticism. Laughter began to return naturally, something she'd almost forgotten. She also found moments of solitude where she could sit with her thoughts, write in a journal, or read books for pleasure. These moments became treasures, giving her strength and a sense of personal identity. Despite the growing comfort, she sometimes struggled with lingering fears and memories of the past. Dreams about the stepmother's anger would occasionally wake her in the middle of the night, and sometimes she felt the urge to retreat into silence. Her uncle recognized these moments and offered quiet reassurance, never forcing her to speak but providing a safe presence. Gradually, she realized that healing was a process, that setbacks were natural, and that her experiences did not define her worth or potential. During these 3 months, the girl also discovered talents she had long neglected. She enjoyed writing short stories and poems, capturing small details of her life and imagination. Art became another outlet, allowing her to express emotions that were difficult to speak aloud. Music and rhythm, found in the simplest of ways, added joy to her days. Each new skill was a small victory, building confidence and a sense of identity she had never been able to develop fully in her previous home. Her relationship with her uncle deepened. He was a consistent presence, guiding without controlling, observing without judgment, and supporting without pressure. He celebrated small achievements, like finishing a challenging book or completing a school project, and he was there quietly when she faced disappointments. The girl began to understand the importance of patience, trust, and empathy. Learning that human connections could nurture rather than control, neighbors and friends played a role too. Slowly, she began to form connections with children and adults around her new home. Smiles and greetings became more than just polite gestures. They became reminders that kindness existed outside the walls of her former home. She learned to trust cautiously, sharing small pieces of her thoughts and feelings. Each connection added layers to her healing, slowly creating a network of support and community. The girl also became aware of her own resilience. She noticed that she could face challenges and adapt to new situations without fear overwhelming her. Simple tasks that once seemed impossible were now manageable, and moments of stress or frustration no longer consumed her entirely. She began to see herself as capable, resourceful, and worthy of love and respect. This growing self-awareness was a turning point. A realization that she could shape her own life in ways she had never imagined. The uncle, understanding the importance of gradual adjustment, began introducing subtle surprises. Occasional trips to libraries, cultural centers, and parks expanded her world beyond her immediate surroundings. Each visit offered experiences that nurtured curiosity and wonder. The girl began to dream bigger, imagining futures she had never dared to consider. These experiences reinforced the idea that life could be joyful, safe, and full of opportunities. During this period, the girl also reflected on her past with a new perspective. She understood the hardships she had faced, but she no longer felt powerless. Instead, she recognized that she had survived and grown stronger. The pain of her early years remained a part of her, but it no longer controlled her. This understanding gave her a quiet strength, an inner confidence that began to shape her actions and choices. As the third month approached, the girl felt a growing sense of anticipation, though she did not know why. The life she was building was stable and secure, yet there was a feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. She spent her days focusing on school, hobbies, and exploring the neighborhood. But her mind occasionally wandered to possibilities she had not yet imagined. The sense of waiting, mixed with hope, created an undercurrent of excitement in her daily life. The uncle remained a steady presence, observing her growth without intruding. He encouraged independence while providing guidance, and he subtly prepared for the next step in her journey. The girl was unaware of the plans, but she sensed that life was moving forward in ways she could not yet understand. Her trust in him had grown to a point where she could rely on his judgment, feeling safe even in moments of uncertainty. Throughout these 3 months, the girl transformed quietly. She laughed more, spoke with confidence, and engaged fully with her environment. Her talents, curiosity, and creativity flourished. She began to envision a future filled with possibilities, where she could make choices for herself and pursue her dreams. The shadow of her past was still present, but it had lost much of its power over her. The anticipation of something new, though undefined, created a sense of excitement. The girl had come to realize that life could offer surprises beyond hardship, and that her efforts, patience, and resilience had meaning. Each day built upon the last, forming a foundation of trust, hope, and self-belief. She was learning that happiness could be consistent and that love and care were not fleeting luxuries, but lasting realities. By the end of the 3 months, the girl had become a changed person. She was still young, still learning, and still cautious, but the transformation was evident. She smiled freely, spoke confidently, and faced each day with determination and curiosity. She had begun to reclaim her childhood, rebuild her confidence, and develop a sense of identity that was entirely her own. And although she did not yet know the full extent of what awaited her, she was ready to embrace it with an open heart and an eager spirit. 3 months had passed since the girl moved into her uncle's care. In that time, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more aware of what life could offer. Yet despite the calm and joy she had begun to experience, she sensed that something significant was about to happen. There was a quiet excitement in her days, a feeling she could not explain, like the air before a gentle rain. She continued her studies, her hobbies, and her explorations of the neighborhood, all while carrying a sense of anticipation she could not name. One morning, her uncle approached her with a gentle smile. He told her to get ready, as they had somewhere important to go. She did not ask questions, trusting him completely. Her heart beat faster as they walked to a car waiting outside the house. The ride was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the engine and the occasional bird song outside. The girl tried to guess the reason for this trip, imagining all sorts of possibilities. But none of them seemed certain. They arrived at a large office building, and she noticed the difference immediately. The building was bright, clean, and organized. People moved about in a calm, professional manner. The girl felt a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. She had never been in such a place, and the unfamiliar surroundings made her aware of how much her world had expanded in just 3 months. Her uncle led her into a meeting room where a few people were waiting. They greeted her warmly, with smiles that immediately put her at ease. She realized that these were lawyers and advisors, here to guide and explain something important. She listened carefully as her uncle spoke quietly to them, explaining her progress and the support she had received since moving into his care. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the lawyers looked at her and explained that her uncle had made plans to secure her future. They told her that he had taken legal steps to ensure that she would have not just a safe home, but also education, resources, and independence guaranteed. The girl's eyes widened as she tried to process the information. Adoption, legal guardianship, and financial security were terms she had never truly understood before. But now their meaning became clear in the warmth and care surrounding her. Her uncle smiled, watching her reaction patiently. He explained that she was no longer alone, that she had a family who cared deeply for her well-being, and that her efforts, resilience, and courage had not gone unnoticed. He told her that she could now dream freely, pursue her interests, and build a future on her own terms, without fear or limitation. The girl felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude. As the day continued, she was guided through the practical details of the changes. Her education was secured, her living arrangements were confirmed, when she was given a sense of agency she had never experienced before. Each explanation, though formal, was infused with care and reassurance. The girl began to understand that this was not just a temporary change, but a permanent shift in her life. She was now fully supported and protected. With the freedom to grow and explore, the girl and her uncle left the office later that day. Walking through the park on the way home, the sunlight felt warmer, the air fresher, and the world around her seemed brighter. She looked at her uncle and realized that the person who had quietly watched over her for so long had given her the greatest gift: security, love, and the freedom to be herself. The weight of the past seemed lighter, the shadows smaller, and the future full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. At home, the girl began to adjust to this new reality. She organized her books, worked on her hobbies, and started planning small goals for her future. The sense of empowerment was profound. She could make choices without fear, pursue her interests without restriction, and build relationships with others knowing that she was safe and valued. Her confidence continued to grow, supported by the steady presence of her uncle, who encouraged independence while offering guidance when needed. Friends and neighbors began to notice the change in her demeanor. She smiled more, spoke with clarity, and engaged with the world in ways she had not before. She joined school activities she had once avoided, made connections with peers, and started to dream bigger. The realization that she was truly supported allowed her creativity, curiosity, and ambition to flourish. Every small accomplishment became a celebration. Reinforcing the sense that her life was now in her own hands, the girl also reflected on her past with a new understanding. She recognized the hardships she had endured, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they became a testament to her resilience and courage. She understood that while the past could not be changed, it had shaped her into someone capable, empathetic, and strong. This perspective gave her a quiet strength, allowing her to face each day with determination and hope. Over time, the girl began to explore opportunities beyond her immediate environment. She attended workshops, joined clubs, and discovered interests she had never known. Her talents, once hidden, became visible and celebrated. Art, writing, and learning became sources of joy and expression. Each new experience reinforced the sense that life was full of possibilities. and that she had the power to shape her own journey. Her relationship with her uncle deepened further. He continued to provide guidance, support, and encouragement, but never imposed limits or expectations. Their bond grew into one of trust, respect, and genuine care. The girl realized that family was not defined solely by blood, but by consistent love, understanding, and protection. She felt fortunate to have someone who believed in her and supported her unconditionally as months turned into seasons. The girl's life transformed completely. She no longer felt the fear and isolation that had dominated her early years. Instead, she experienced freedom, joy, and a sense of purpose. Her education, her home, and her relationships were now secure, allowing her to focus on growth and discovery. Each day brought new learning, challenges, and opportunities, and she faced them with courage and determination. The surprise of the legal and permanent care had left an indelible mark on her heart. She realized that life could offer unexpected gifts, that resilience and patience were rewarded, and that love could be steadfast and enduring. The experience shaped her worldview, teaching her that even in the face of hardship, there were paths to safety, happiness, and self-realization by the end of the story. The girl had transformed from a quiet, fearful child into a confident, capable young person. She smiled freely, spoke with conviction, and engaged fully with the world around her. She had reclaimed her childhood, discovered her potential, and built a future filled with hope. The journey was not just about escaping the past, but about learning to embrace the present and shape the future with courage, wisdom, and love. She understood that the greatest surprise was not the legal arrangements or the security, but the realization that her life could truly belong to her, that she had been chosen, protected, and given the chance to grow in ways she had never imagined. And as she looked forward, she carried with her the lessons of resilience, trust, and the enduring power of kindness. Ready to face whatever came next with an open heart and an eager spirit, life continued to evolve for the girl in ways she had never imagined. Each day was filled with new experiences, small victories, challenges that shaped her into a more confident and capable person. Her days were structured yet flexible, allowing her to explore interests, pursue her education, and slowly understand the depth of the love and support that surrounded her. While the past still lingered in memories, it no longer dictated the rhythm of her life. Instead, she felt empowered to shape her own path. She began to take a greater interest in her studies, exploring subjects she had previously only dreamed about. Mathematics, literature, and science became exciting avenues for learning. Teachers noticed her dedication and encouraged her to push further, offering guidance and challenges that she embraced. For the first time, school was not a place to survive, but a place to thrive. Her curiosity blossomed, and she started to see knowledge as a tool to build her future. Her hobbies and personal interests also flourished. She painted, wrote, and experimented with creative projects that allowed her to express emotions that had long been bottled up. Each creation was a reflection of her journey, her hopes, and her resilience. The uncle encouraged these activities, always patient and supportive, celebrating every effort she made. These small moments of recognition fueled her self-confidence and motivated her to take on more ambitious projects. She also began forming friendships outside her immediate family circle. Neighbors and peers at school were drawn to her gentle demeanor and intelligence. Slowly, she learned how to communicate her thoughts and feelings without fear. These friendships, built on trust and shared interests, helped her see that human connections could be nurturing and positive. She discovered the joy of giving and receiving support, laughter, and companionship. Life at home continued to be safe and nurturing. Her uncle maintained a balance between guidance and independence, allowing her to make decisions while being available for advice when needed. Meals were shared without tension, conversations flowed naturally, and moments of quiet reflection were respected. This stable environment allowed the girl to develop routines, personal goals, and a sense of responsibility for her own growth. One day, the uncle suggested that they take a short trip to the city, a place she had rarely visited. The idea thrilled her, and she eagerly prepared for the journey. The city was bustling with energy, tall buildings, and people moving in every direction. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, realizing how much of the world was open to her now. Every street, every shop, every small detail was a learning experience. She absorbed it all, taking mental notes and dreaming of possibilities she had never imagined. During the trip, they visited museums, libraries, and cultural centers. She was fascinated by exhibits, books, and the stories behind each display. The experiences broadened her perspective, making her realize the richness and diversity of life beyond her previous experiences. She began to see that her potential was limitless, and that her talents could take her to places she had only dreamed of before. Each experience was a building block in her confidence and ambition. Back at home, the girl continued to grow emotionally and mentally. She started keeping a journal, documenting her thoughts, ideas, and reflections on the world around her. Writing became a powerful tool for self-expression, helping her process emotions, plan her future, and reflect on her journey. She often shared portions of her writings with her uncle, who read them with pride and offered gentle feedback. This ongoing dialogue strengthened their bond and encouraged her to articulate her thoughts. More clearly, she also began exploring ways to help others. Inspired by her own journey, she volunteered at local initiatives, helping children and peers in small but meaningful ways. She discovered the satisfaction of making a difference in someone else's life, realizing that her experiences had equipped her with empathy, understanding, and resilience that could be shared with others. These small acts of kindness became part of her daily routine, reinforcing her sense of purpose and community. The girl's relationship with her uncle evolved into one of mutual respect and deep affection. He provided guidance, celebrated her achievements, and offered reassurance during challenges. She learned to trust his judgment, knowing that his support was unwavering. Their conversations became more meaningful, touching on values, dreams, and life lessons. She realized that family was more than blood. It was about care, trust, and consistent support. This realization gave her a profound sense of belonging and security. Over time, she also began to explore her own identity and aspirations. She considered future education, career paths, and personal goals. She was encouraged to think independently, to dream big, and to take steps toward achieving those dreams. With the stability and guidance she had, she felt capable of overcoming obstacles and embracing opportunities. Her resilience, once tested by hardship, now became a foundation for her growth and ambition. One evening, while reading in her room, she reflected on how far she had come. She thought about her past life, the hardships she had endured, and the emotional challenges she had faced. But instead of feeling sorrow, she felt pride and gratitude. She had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. The transformation she had undergone in just a few months was remarkable. She had learned to trust, to dream, and to embrace life fully. The pain of the past no longer held her captive. It had become a source of strength. As she prepared for bed, the girl felt a quiet excitement for the days ahead. She knew that life was full of surprises, challenges, and opportunities. But now, she had the skills, support, and confidence to navigate them. She had discovered the power of resilience, trust, and consistent care. The journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had transformed into a path of hope, growth. In self-discovery, the girl realized that her life was no longer defined by what she had endured, but by what she could achieve. She was empowered, capable, and ready to embrace the future with courage and determination. The foundation laid by her uncle's guidance, the nurturing environment, and her own resilience had prepared her to take on the world. She knew that challenges would come, but she now had the strength and support to face them confidently. Each day brought new lessons, small achievements, and moments of joy. She continued to explore her interests, nurture her talents, and build meaningful connections. Her sense of purpose grew stronger, and she became increasingly aware of the impact she could have on her own life and the lives of others. She began to see herself not just as a survivor, but as a young person capable of shaping her own destiny. Through these experiences, the girl developed a deep sense of empathy, understanding, and compassion. She recognized that her journey, though difficult, had given her unique insights and strengths. She was able to connect with others, offer guidance, and provide support in ways that were both meaningful and impactful. Her personal growth became a source of inspiration for those around her, reinforcing the idea that resilience and care could transform lives. As Part 6 concludes, the girl stands on the threshold of her future. She has overcome fear, found trust, embraced learning, and discovered the power of consistent support and love. Her journey is far from over, but she now possesses the tools, confidence, and mindset to face whatever comes next. She is ready to continue exploring, growing, and building a life defined by her choices, her talents, and her dreams. Her story is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, the impact of kindness, and the limitless possibilities that await when hope is nurtured and opportunity is embraced.